If you're trying to understand what truly sparks attraction in synastry, stay right here. Hello, dear astrology lovers from all over the world. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Alexandra and I'm a professional ISAR certified astrologer. In today's video, we're talking about love, and I'm super excited to walk you through different aspects that show what kind of connection you and your current or potential partner have, as well as what your long-term perspectives are. Let's dive in. Every relationship is an entity, like a new being that we create with another person, and it has specific characteristics that are described through mutual aspects. Relationships can be based on three types of connections: physical, emotional, and mental. And this is very important to understand because it's the starting point in synastry. We want to identify the key connectors between two people, and those connectors are the planets in mutual aspects. Let's start with passion. You might wonder what the most powerful aspect is when it comes to mutual physical attraction, passion, and chemistry. And here comes a huge revelation. It's Mars from the female horoscope in a good aspect or conjunction with Venus from the male horoscope. Yes, you heard it right. It's Mars from the female horoscope with Venus from the male horoscope, not the opposite. So, when female planets from a male's chart form harmonious aspects with male planets in a female's chart, that creates the strongest passionate and physical attraction. It can also be the moon in a male chart in a good aspect with the sun in a female chart, or the sun in a female chart forming a good aspect with Venus in a male chart. Why does this happen? Relationships in which we are physically attracted to someone operate on a deeply irrational level. And it's important to understand that every woman, besides having Venus in her horoscope, also has Mars. The male energy exists in women in the same way the female energy exists in every man. Venus in a male chart doesn't only represent the type of women he'll fall in love with, it also describes him. So it is part of who he is. In simpler words, we all have both male and female hormones. The only difference is how dominant each is. And when two people connect on this deeply irrational level, male energy in a woman with female energy in a man, it creates a much deeper connection than the default version in which Venus from a female chart forms a harmonious aspect with Mars from a male chart. This is a great aspect, super strong, very passionate. However, the one that I have just explained is much stronger. There is also one aspect that is super strong. However, it isn't mutual when it comes to physical attraction. And that's a positive aspect between one person's moon and the other person's Mars. The moon person will be physically attracted to the Mars person because the moon feels and absorbs things, and in this case, it's Mars's energy. Trines and sextiles work well here, while the conjunction can be quite uncomfortable because Mars's energy is too rough for the moon and it can even feel aggressive. The conjunction is also a strong karmic aspect, indicating that these two people were enemies in the past incarnations, while in this one, they're connected through passion. Squares and oppositions are similar when it comes to passion and potentially like aggression, but the conjunction is the strongest difficult aspect here. The situation is similar with the moon and Pluto. But this aspect is much stronger because the moon person is magnetically attracted to the Pluto person, and this connection is very physical and kind of irresistible. Speaking of Pluto, its aspects with Venus are also extremely powerful, with the conjunction being the strongest. This is such a strong and deep connection that these two people don't even have to talk. They understand everything just by looking at each other. Venus is absolutely fascinated with Pluto and adores Pluto's power, while Pluto loves possessing Venus. This is one of the most passionate aspects and often creates a bond that feels feels unbreakable. In difficult aspects, there is too much control and jealousy, so the relationship can go from magnetic attraction to destruction. And now let's discuss romantic relationships. When it comes to more romantic aspects, we can definitely talk about a trine, sextile, or conjunction between one person's moon and the other person's Venus. This is truly special because it brings a deep inner feeling of love, closeness, and magic. The moon person will feel that they are in love with the Venus person because the moon absorbs everything like a sponge. And in this case, it's Venus's energy. So the moon is also like an open window. And here it's facing Venus, which symbolizes love. So the moon person is essentially saying, I love you. The conjunction between one person's moon and the other person's Venus is the strongest combination when it comes to love, not physical attraction, but pure emotional love, because the moon represents the soul, intimacy, vulnerability, and emotions. And in this case, the moon person sees the best in the Venus person, all their virtues and positive traits, and they simply love them. The moon person also admires the Venus person and feels completely enchanted by love. Now, what happens when these two planets square each other or form an opposition? This can be quite uncomfortable for the female person in particular because these are both feminine planets, and over time, the woman in this relationship can start to feel unsatisfied and frustrated because she doesn't feel liked or appreciated enough by her partner, especially in marriage when she becomes the moon. It may be related to overall happiness, physical appearance, or aesthetics, even because the moon, a married woman, is in conflict, a square, for example, with Venus, which is joy, beauty, attraction, and so on. Romantic love often comes with a harmonious aspect between Venus and Neptune. This is pure seduction, a magical atmosphere, imagination, and enchantment. The Venus person is captivated by the Neptune person. In difficult aspects, there is disappointment due to illusions, idealization, betrayals, and lies. Another love indicator is one person's Venus in conjunction with the other person's ascendant or in the other person's fourth, fifth, or seventh house. In all of these cases, the Venus person will genuinely feel love for the other person. Why? Because they're placing their Venus, everything they love, on some of the most important points in the other person's chart. If it's the ascendant, it literally represents the other person themselves. So, what do I love? Boom, Venus on that person's ascendant. I love that person. The fourth house represents emotions and intimacy. The fifth house is romance, and the seventh house rules relationships. When Venus falls into any of these, it's a strong indicator of a love connection. And what are the indicators of a mental connection? Mental compatibility is represented by the harmonious aspects between two Venuses, two Mercuries, and two moons. When two Venuses form a trine, sextile, or conjunction, it manifests as liking each other. This aspect is not as strong or deep as, for example, the aspect between Mars and Venus. It's quite superficial, which is why it represents mental compatibility. Two people are flirting, smiling at each other, laughing, and feeling positive when the other person is around. So, this is not a deciding aspect when it comes to starting relationships. When two Venuses square each other or form an opposition, the way these two people approach love differs. Their love needs and languages can be quite different, which can bring some difficulties to their overall compatibility. Harmonious aspects between two Mercuries give great communication, which contributes to the quality of a romantic relationship. However, again, it's not a deciding factor in whether two people will be together. Also, this aspect is great for friendships and business collaborations. Two Mercuries in a difficult aspect represent different mindsets, so communication can be challenging. And this is particularly difficult if one person's Mercury is in Taurus or Capricorn, because these signs can be quite stubborn when it comes to their ideas, beliefs, and points of view in general. Two moons in a harmonious aspect represent soulmates. From the very beginning, there is usually a strong feeling of familiarity, as if they already know each other. Living under the same roof is quite easy because they share similar habits they adopted in their own families. However, despite all these great qualities, this is also not a deciding factor for a relationship. Two people can have a warm and close connection without ending up together. Stronger aspects are required to actually start a relationship. If two moons are in a difficult aspect, then the way these two people were raised differs, their habits are different, and living together can be quite challenging. As time goes by, these differences can become annoying and irritating, which can contribute to a separation if other aspects indicate that as well, of course. The moon is very soft in general, sensitive, and personal planet. It represents our soul, intimacy, and feelings. So each aspect it forms is quite important, actually. If it's in a good aspect with the other person's sun, it creates strong physical attraction because the sun and moon represent basic masculine and feminine energies. So it's similar to Mars and Venus. When positively connected, especially in conjunction, these two planets often lead to marriage. So pregnancy usually happens easily, and the couple may feel drawn to starting a family because they carry the memory of having been a family in previous incarnations. In difficult aspects, this shows a lack of compatibility. What the sun person wants and how they express their will doesn't resonate with the moon person, making it hard to function together, especially in marriage. A positive aspect between one person's moon and the other person's Mercury is great for long, intimate conversations. Whatever the Mercury person says, the moon person feels. So there's a deep understanding, and this is really a beautiful aspect. However, despite being so great, a relationship can't be based just on that because it's simply not enough. When it comes to difficult aspects between these two planets, the Mercury person can say something that hurts the moon person, and wherever the moon person needs emotionally doesn't come to an understanding with the Mercury person, so this can really spoil the connection. When it comes to aspects between the moon and Mars, I covered them at the beginning of this video, but overall, these aspects bring a lot of passion, and in difficult aspects, the moon person can get hurt either emotionally or physically. If the moon forms a harmonious aspect with Jupiter, the relationship is filled with positivity, it's meaningful, and gives a sense of purpose. On the other hand, in difficult aspects, the moon person can be disappointed because expectations may be much higher than what reality brings. The Jupiter person might not be able to emotionally fulfill the moon person, so this can also be uncomfortable. And here comes Saturn. This is a huge deal. If the moon forms a trine or sextile with the other person's Saturn, that's fine. It can give a long lasting relationship and emotional stability to the moon person. However, if one person's Saturn forms a square, opposition, or conjunction with the other person's moon, the relationship can be very depressing, heavy, and unfortunate for the moon person. Conjunction between the moon and Saturn is one of the most difficult aspects in the synastry. Saturn's aspects are usually felt later in the relationship because Saturn rules time, so its impact comes gradually. At the beginning, you feel the aspects between personal and much faster moving planets. But overall, all the afflictions from Saturn indicate karmic lessons, so this would be a karmic relationship. In case of an affliction, especially a conjunction, the Saturn person usually ends up abandoning the Moon person, leaving a bitter taste and sorrow. The Moon person has a karmic debt to the Saturn person, which is why this connection exists. The Saturn person often brings lessons, challenges, and responsibilities that the Moon person needs to face. Although the relationship can feel heavy or restrictive, it exists to help the Moon person grow emotionally and learn important life lessons. And speaking of Saturn, I also have to say that its aspects to Mars and Venus are very important too. When they are harmonious, they usually create stable and long lasting relationships. With Venus, it often indicates a formal marriage because Saturn loves formalities and Venus represents marriage. However, in difficult aspects to Mars or Venus, Saturn always indicates a karmic connection, and it is the Mars or Venus person who carries a debt toward the Saturn person. When Saturn afflicts Venus, love gradually cools down over time, and eventually the Saturn person may leave the Venus person. Saturn is time, so this relationship or marriage, which is Venus, has a time limitation. There is a certain point at which it ends. The situation with Mars is a bit more challenging because conflicts can emerge as you go deeper into the relationship, and they can eventually turn into hostility. Since both Mars and Saturn are malefics, in a difficult aspect, they can be quite harsh toward each other because they are seeing each other like enemies. This is another aspect that usually leads to separation. Now, let's get back to the moon aspects. When it comes to a harmonious aspect between the moon and Uranus, it can bring a lot of excitement and dynamics into the relationship. But in difficult aspects, especially the conjunction, the moon person, especially if it's a woman, can become quite stressed. The relationship can be unstable and unpredictable. Constant breakups and reunions are possible, or separation due to different circumstances. It can be because of work or because the partners live in different countries or cities or similar situations. Overall, the main issue here is that the Uranus person wants excitement or freedom, which can be overwhelming for the moon person. And in the end, unfortunately, the moon person can become boring to the Uranus person. If the moon forms a harmonious aspect with the other person's Neptune, the moon person becomes enchanted and feels the magic in the relationship. However, in difficult aspects, the moon person can't see the partner clearly. There are illusions, disappointments, and sometimes lies, betrayals, and trust issues. So the relationship can be quite toxic. When it comes to harmonious aspects between the moon and Pluto, this can give a huge passion. The moon person is magnetically attracted to the Pluto person, as I explained earlier in the video. And in difficult aspects, including the conjunction, the relationship can become destructive with control, abuse, and jealousy coming from the Pluto person. And last but not least, houses and house cusps play an extremely important role in synastry. And it's extremely important which planet falls into which house in your partner's horoscope and vice versa. In the context of love synastry, what's the first thing we want to look at? We want to determine whether the rulers of the fifth and seventh houses are making any harmonious aspects. The fifth house represents a love, and the seventh house represents partnership and marriage. And if their rulers are in harmonious aspects, that's already a strong astrological indicator for a romantic attraction. And those rulers don't have to be Mars and Venus, which are the main love planets. Any planet becomes important when we consider the rulership over these two houses. Now, what happens when these two rulers are in a difficult aspect. For example, they're squaring each other. This doesn't necessarily mean that the two people won't start a relationship. They definitely can. However, there can be some tension or frustration that could eventually lead to a breakup. Also, as I said, it's important to define which planet falls into which house in your partner's horoscope because it also speaks a lot about the connection. If one person's moon falls into the other person's first or seventh house, the moon person will definitely feel emotionally attached and will want to become the other person's partner. It's similar with the fourth house, which is pretty emotional. And to activate emotional connection and intimacy with the moon person, we need to give them something related to the house their moon falls into. For example, if our partner's moon falls into our fifth house, we can go out with them, have fun, and get closer that way. If it's in the 12th house, we can go to the cinema or spend time together in peaceful, uncrowded places. If it's in the sixth house, and this is an interesting one, we can connect through a pet. If it's in the second house, we can prepare some food for them, and so on. Here's another example. If one person's Saturn falls on the other person's ascendant, spending time with the Saturn person can lower the ascendant person's energy. What is the Saturn person bringing here? Nothing easy, joyful, or positive, just heaviness, worries, and bad news. Overall, it's quite unpleasant. So you don't want any of the malefics on your ascendant or in your fourth, fifth, or seventh house. And I think we've covered the most important aspects in love synastry. We've also identified the strongest ones as well as those that are important but not necessarily decisive for a relationship. Of course, there are many other aspects between other planets, but it's impossible to cover everything in a single video. I'd love to hear about your experiences with love synastry, so feel free to share them in the comments below. I also hope you found this video useful and inspiring, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.